Good morning, my garden friends, and welcome to my January backyard garden tour. This is the first garden tour of 2025. Although we're approaching winter, all of our gardens are not looking exactly perfect. So I thought I would turn my camera on today and just keep it real and be transparent and show you that not all gardens are perfect this time of year. And that's okay. I know some of you have snow and a lot of our plants have gone into dormancy, so it's kind of a struggle to get outside and garden, and it's also very cold and windy. I keep trying to clean off my patio, but the wind just keeps blowing leaves. Hello there, Tommy, and hello there, Abby's running around. Yes, all my vinca have finally been cut back. Remember how beautiful that was, all the color? But that's okay. I have a few little violas and couple little violas in the stacked tires, a cordyline. But I do love my sedum. Is that the lemon ball, lemon coral thing? I'm not sure, but it definitely adds a pop of color. And I'm looking forward to seeing my beautiful pink jasmine. It's going to be blooming in another month or two. And I just spray painted that chair and colored some horseshoes and made like a little flower. I'm not sure I'm going to keep that canna lily behind the chair. Maybe I'll cut it all the way back. I'm not sure. They just kind of, canna lilies, like the snails get to them and then the leaves kind of get brown. So I'm still thinking about that one, not quite sure. I also wanted to talk to you about having a small garden and what you can do in a small garden. I call this my little cottage garden because it's so bright and colorful right now. I thought I'd start here, but this is a very small area and I've always wanted a cottage garden, but I have a very small gardening space. So what I do is I just make my garden areas in smaller scale. That bench is too big for me to sit on. Because I have a small space, I just kind of downsized, like having a fairy garden. So this is my little cottage garden. I just got some cheap little fences at the big box store, and every year I spray paint them green again so they look new, and I just spray painted those recently. I have some primroses in there because, well, there's not a whole heck of a lot we can be growing this time of year, but the little primroses definitely give it some color. And then I just stacked a couple little terracotta pots and put some violas in there. Right back here is one of those geraniums, but it's not blooming right now because, well, it's January, and I normally blow out all those white leaves and keep them clean. I just did that the other day, but because we're in January, the wind is blowing like a mad dog, and I just keep getting debris in there. So that's my little cottage garden and a little birdhouse. I'm getting ready to plant either strawberries or succulents in my Dollar Tree stackable containers. And I do have a new garden area that I can't wait to show you. It's still under construction, but I'm going to take you back there and show you what I'm doing. But first, look at my pretty paper whites. They're all blooming. The other pots are kind of empty because I just planted all my spring bulbs. So those haven't come up yet, but I did plant daffodils and tulips. Getting ready to figure out what I want to put in my vintage bathtub. Again, there's more spring bulbs planted in here. I'm just waiting for those to make their appearance. These paper whites smell so good. They naturalize in my area. Oh, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Liz and I garden in California, Zone 9B. So yeah, there's still some things blooming and there's still some fun things that look pretty this time of year. So I guess you could say this is a California garden in January. This veggie box is going through composting right now. There's a fig tree that's in dormant stage, a butterfly bush, agara. Oh, and look at all my nasturtium is coming back from seed. So yeah, this is, January and it's all composting right now. There's not a whole lot to see. So I know if you have a garden that's just not looking its best, don't be discouraged and don't feel bad. Nobody's garden is looking perfect right now. Nobody's garden. We all go through our seasonal struggles. That's going to be blooming soon, and more nasturtium over here. My Elizabeth bougainvillea is blooming. Can you believe that? I guess I should be more appreciative to what is growing in my garden and not be upset that there's lack of. I have snapdragons and more paper whites over here, although I do admit I love growing paper whites in pots better. They just seem to do better. And then I can also protect them from the wind and the rain so they don't flop. My snapdragons, I'm hoping they'll survive the winter. Then come spring, they will have already established a really good root system and they'll just make an encore appearance come spring. Look at my nasturtium. There's orange and yellow flowers. You just never know about nasturtium. They're such a surprise. And inside my little stackable tires, I have some pansies and some miniature roses. But of course, this time of year, the roses aren't blooming very much anymore. And a lot of you asked me, how come I don't paint my stackable tires? Well, truth of the matter is, I have in the past. But then what happens is the paint starts to fade and it looks kind of dirty. So I just decided to leave it more organic and natural because I don't want the tires to be the focal point. I kind of want the flowers to be the focal point, if that makes sense. And I did take my pineapple sage out of this center and I replaced it with a beautiful rose and some salvia and a Proven Winners Super Tunia Vista bubblegum, and this hasn't died. I'm thinking it's going to make it through the winter perhaps. I don't know. There's a Shasta daisy behind there, and of course that's not doing anything right now because of the weather. But look at all these little seeds. Those are my larkspur. Now I'm going to take you to my new garden area. I'm so excited. And keep in mind, it's still under construction. Here we go. And here it is. Okay, so the idea behind this garden is, do you remember what it looked like before? I had that pot, that old antique wash basin the other way with plants in it. As you know, I like to have little areas and corners in my garden because my garden is small. I like to have a lot of different areas of interest. So I already showed you my cottage garden, and this is going to be my maybe future fairy garden. I'm not really quite sure, but my idea is to have a path that leads to another new garden area that I will take you back and show you in just a second. So I had to create something here where I could walk to the back of that big building because I actually have space back there that I now want to utilize. So I'm thinking, well, how can I get back there where I won't be tripping and it'll be easy? So I decided I would make a walkway area. I first started with some stepping stones and I didn't like the way that looked. It just didn't settle right with me. You know how like when you do something in your garden and it's just not sitting right, the balance, just everything about it isn't right with your heart. So I decided I'm going to use these cute little colorful stepping stones that I bought at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to put a dark gray larger than pea gravel all the way in between and throughout the path. I really like the movement of these little stepping stones instead. It just kind of flows and gives it a lot of movement to this area, which I really like better compared to those other stones I had. But you know, sometimes you really don't know how something is going to turn out until you start going for it and just start doing things. This is behind the shop. And I have this space right here, and I figured this is going to be perfect for starting seeds. See, I have a couple more dogs, and they get this whole half of the house. This whole shop is where I keep all my art supplies, and the dogs get to live in there. And then they also have this outside area to roam around and play. But this area right here I've never utilized, so I figured this will be a great place to start seeds. So I moved this shelf back here, and I moved this little stand back here, which I'll probably paint black along with painting this pole black. So you see I have an area back here. I could even compost back here if I want to. And sorry I didn't post a video with me making this. Truth is, I don't always have a plan. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm in my bathrobe and pajamas and I just come out into my garden and I start doing things. Well, that's what happened a couple days ago when I started working on this new area. I know a lot of people have asked me, how did you plan out your garden? Well, the truth is I didn't plan out my garden. I just do one thing and then it leads to another, and then before I know it, I'm creating something. And this is my little succulent propagation station. It's made up of 3 park benches and I just painted them and stacked them. And yeah, it gets perfect lighting over here. So this is where I put all my little succulents, and because I garden in California, it gets really dry out here. And succulents work really well for me because I don't have to water them too much. That's a string of pickles. Isn't it pretty? The stems are like purple. I just love that plant. The funny thing is, this is also a string of pickles, but do you notice how that one is in the shade, so it's green, whereas the first one has purple in it because it's getting more sun. I think that is just so interesting. And here is another little corner in my garden, a little archway. I used to have morning glories growing up that, but this time of year they couldn't handle the cold, and this is my little fountain garden. I'm making use of another little corner in my garden. So this is another area. So yeah, I like to have little areas and different little themed corners because my garden's small, and this way I can have a cottage garden, I could have a fountain garden, I could have a fairy garden if I just make them on a smaller scale. Little barrel where I grow succulents, and it seems like those mangavis do really well because in the summertime we reach temperatures 115 and it's really hard. So yeah, I mean, if your garden isn't looking its best either, don't feel bad. Like I said, I think we're all in the same boat. A couple little bottle trees, just to add more color to my garden. Nobody's garden is perfect in January. This vintage bathtub, I have some ornamental kale, some little yellow pansies, and a citrus lantana. That's going to be going very dormant very soon, so I'll probably cut that back. I have some tulips planted right there. And yes, my tropical milkweed is still making flowers. I do need to cut that all the way back very soon because tropical milkweeds carry a fungal disease that can harm the monarch butterflies. So in wintertime, it's very important that if you grow a tropical milkweed, you do cut that all the way back. Once that stops blooming, I will definitely do that. Behind my vintage bathtub, I have some 3 vacant pots. My plan is to plant my alliums in there, some taller summer bulbs, so when those come up, it'll make a nice frame and a backdrop to my vintage bathtub. So when I stand right here, you can't see the pots. I'll just see more flowers popping up. Plus allium bulbs, their foliage starts to die the minute the allium comes up, and it's kind of unattractive. So this way you won't see that. You'll just see the beautiful big allium blooms without that dying and yellowing foliage. So that's my plan for having those pots behind the tub. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's garden tour, and I hope you liked my new garden area too. Thank you so much for watching.